and happiness that comes from it. So for these reasons, my first answer is yes. Going to the second question, do I approve of the current version of the evaluation criteria? I would say no. And I'll start with an overview. Right now, it's a good start, so I'm like, it's a nice start, but this has not got the right quantitative data. Like, for instance, there's a statement like, stop too much parking, but we don't have bright lines on what too much parking is. And so we need to have a lot more of the things that Sarah was bringing up, like how do you talk about whether the trails are encroaching, whether too much parking is occurring, those sort of bright lines that make it a useful criteria. Secondly, the baseline, I think we're starting the baseline with construction, and already thousands of volunteer hours have been put into the park. And so I think it's a little bit unfair to the substantial amount of effort that has already occurred to set the baseline right now. We need to acknowledge that we've already had a lot of native species planted. I personally pulled out numerous ivy vines that were as big around as my arm. We've got to kind of acknowledge that a lot of work has already occurred. Third thing is this does not have very much qualitative data, which I think it's important that we look for some of the beautiful things that happen in the woods, those kind of happy experiences, the people that get their first interaction with riding a bike or challenging themselves or spotting a bird for the first time, those kind of quiet moments that some of you spoke about. That sort of quality is something that we need to be on the lookout for and has to be a part of the way that we evaluate the success of this project, not just the amount of litter that's spotted or vandalism. I'm also going to make a few more comments. I'm the data person, so I'm going to spend a lot of time on two.
So we're getting really low on time.
Okay.
Is there a way for you to give me your written comments?
I can give you written comments. I'll just go to one thing that's very important, though. The environmental education component mentions signage as an aspect. I think that this is insufficient. We really need to have dedicated outreach on this trail. We need to have people that help actively invite people into the trail. Like, there's talk of how it's so important for having the kids in Rainier Vista. They need to actually have someone, especially if they're very young, hold their hand and bring them into the woods. And so having an established program for that sort of education and outreach is vital to the success of this project. So those are the things I wanted to say on that. And then for the question 3, I'd like to echo that I don't think that it's fair to put the entire cost on a single friends group, and that we do need to have a budget for mitigation as well as evaluation. That's another reason I don't like the standards, is if we do see harms, we need to act on those harms and not just, they need to stop, and there's ways that we can do it. So best management practices are in place for mitigation rather than just evaluating the harm. And we need to have that budget for the educational component.
Thanks, Melanie. Ed?
Yes, yes, and yes. Thank you. I have more to say than that. First of all, I want to thank thank you for being selecting me to be on the PAC. It's been a pleasure, and I've certainly learned a lot being a part of this process. For the first question, do I recommend that Acting Park Superintendent Christopher Williams direct the staff to continue with current physical design? Yes, with a big N. I am encouraged and was very pleased with the separated trails on the proposed plan. One concern that I do have is the lack of cross space access. I think that And I was encouraged by just general trail access. It seems that we've added more access points to the green space and to the trail. For question number 2, as far as do I recommend that Acting Superintendent Christopher Williams, Director Staff, continue working on the current version of evaluation criteria? Yes, I do, and with a big and. One thing that, and I'll go ahead and answer number 3. Yes, I do recommend that that we continue, or that the staff continue with the Cheesy Trails pilot project. So 3 yeses there. And I say that with just reflecting on this process. This green space, this community is surrounded by youth and adults of color. And in the 5 meetings that have been here, I've been one of probably 6. And I've listened to public comment and I've worked in the community. I've been in Seattle for about 26 years now. And it's a challenge that I throw out to Friends of Cheesty in moving forward, is that the outreach be intentional, transparent, and authentic, and that we engage communities of color in a very genuine way. There's a lot of youth, and there's been a lot of talk about connecting youth to nature, and the only way that is going to be possible, that the only way that is going to be sustainable, is to have an intentional plan to do that, and to not take that lightly. So that's a challenge that I throw out as moving forward, is that we be intentional, and that we be transparent, and that we be authentic in our outreach, in our engagement of communities of color. Thanks.
Thank you. Tom, you want to give us your answers on the evaluation?
Sure, thanks, because I thought we were
criteria?
going through
Yeah.
one at a time. But very quickly, I'm not going to quibble with any details on the monitoring, other than to say that we run the risk of having too many measures. A committee can assemble something just too vast and complicated. I'm in favor of a few meaningful, important metrics rather than tracking everything we can possibly think of, primarily because it's so resource intensive, and this thing could get choked as a result. I don't want us to get lost in the weeds, so to speak, on the details. Also would reiterate Dan's comment that because of this, because it's proving to be expensive and because it's been contentious, I think it deserves a line in the Seattle Parks budget. And then the answer on the final question, yes.
Thank you. Briefly from Curtis, and I will send you his email. He wanted me to read the whole thing, but just because we're limited on time, he says yes to the continue work on this current design, reiterating that others would like the department to consider adding cross trails. Yes, working with the current evaluation criteria. He feels those are adequate to monitor the project. And yes, continue with the pilot project. And then he also has a broader statement about the role of this recreational facility in the community, etc. I will forward this on to you and not read it all. Daryl, you ready now? Daryl and Kathy, we'll wrap up. Yeah, 5 minutes. I know that. So 2.5 minutes each.
I don't do a lot of public speaking, and I spend a lot of time out in the woods. I appreciate everybody coming out and participating in this process. It's obviously this process is far more important to a citywide perspective. It's not just about Cheesty. And for me, this is really about the connection between trails and natural areas or green spaces. And I've been working in my little green space over in Leschi for over a decade, and it's kind of shocking when dogs come in on off-leash dogs, and there's absolute no control, and they tearing the place up. And I put my heart and soul into it, and now I see this proposal coming out, this pilot project, and you know, I saw an opportunity for us as a city as a whole to, you know, make some wise decisions about how we're going to manage our natural areas. Unfortunately, when I signed up on the PAT, it was my understanding we were going to be putting in a multi-use single perimeter trail, and I really had a tough time getting past that. We as a group here have somehow decided that that's not important. I think we've all missed the point on that. And so therefore, you know, this project shouldn't go forward, and I don't know why people don't understand that. You know, the city council was pretty clear about what they intended. You know, obviously you guys you're well aware of my feelings on this these questionnaires, and I'm sure you know what my answers are going to be. Given 2.5 minutes isn't a lot of time, and it's difficult. I'll turn it over to Kathy. She may have something more to say, but. Yeah, you know, to focus on the criteria, I think the important thing here is come up. We danced around the whole issue of, like, is this project going to be a pass or a fail? I mean, is there a threshold that's going to say that this project is a failure? And we have been unable to even come close to even approaching that issue. No one can even tell me right now how many lineal feet of trail are being proposed. We've never been able to know how many acres this project even covers. No one can tell us any basic quantifiable data. And tonight I learned that trails are actually impervious surfaces. You know, we're just at the baby steps here, and I believe there's a long, long ways to go before you're going to get a project that's successful.
I came in really with an open mind, and I've been very...
What? Hey, snap it up. Come on, let's
I came in with an open mind because I've lived in Cheesty and have really taken care of Cheesty, unbeknownst to maybe a lot of the new neighbors that have come in. We've also added space so that there is 43 acres. We've also prevented buildings from coming in. But I'm disappointed that we're not looking at doing this in stages, because this is a really fragile ecosystem. And to do this right, to start with a walking trail, look at the area, look at what's working, what's not working, you know, and then establish some criteria, and then look at long-term, what can a bike trail go in? Is this the best place for it? To do this in 5 meetings, I really don't think is sufficient for this open space. We keep hearing about the use of the park, and we have rarely talked about the value that exists there. We keep talking about children, and yet we didn't highlight the natural aspects of children. We've talked about them riding through. What about, like Melanie, you brought up, the environmental education? I wish we could have spent more time talking about that. And the reason I wanted to be later on was because I was thinking about, as a teacher and working in the national and state parks, what a wonderful opportunity with the evaluation criteria to bring in some of the high school students to help with some of the turbidity samples. I mean, I think that there's opportunity for students to learn and to make this a learning lab, but I really feel like we're just rushing through this and not looking at these opportunities. If we really are concerned about the children, if we're really concerned about the nature, then let's do it in steps. And let's see how it's working. Let's bridge the divisiveness. You know, I keep hearing these myths coming up about whatever, won't go there. So I'm disappointed that Parks had a wonderful opportunity to bring us together with the same background so we could talk about this. If it took a year, heaven's sakes, who cares? As long as we're doing this together. The evaluation criteria, I'm much more hopeful for, but it does need, sorry, science teachers, science and math, it needs to be more quantitative. And working in the national and state parks, what's going to be the limited number of bicyclists during certain times of the year? I know when we've had Fragile Meadows, it's like, okay, we have enough hikers, you know? What's going to be the limit? Is there going to be a limit? I mean, we never talked about that. Signage is not enough for environmental education. You need programs, and signs are going to be vandalized. So, I mean, what can we put in place to have those opportunities for children to hear the woodpeckers and then to go seek them out, to go on night hikes and to feel the bats, to feel the owls that are there. So I have to say no. And I'm worried that there's a lot of pressure on volunteers that may not have expertise that's needed because of the reports that have come out with the erosion, the potential for erosion. You know, if this is going to be done right, because this is a pilot, then let's do it right, but we need experts working alongside the volunteers and teaching them. I'm concerned when I heard about, well, we'll just move logs. Well, some of those logs are habitat for woodpeckers, you know, so we really do need a partnership. And it's not just with Mountain View, but it's with everyone in the community. And Parks, I look to you. How are you going to do that?
Okay? All right. All right, I am going to write this up in a report fashion. You'll see a little bit of a summary, kind of the sense of the group as a whole. I'll then break it down to offer up your, the comments you gave. I will probably do more bullet points than long paragraphs. I hope that's okay. But I'll try to capture the essence of what you said. I'm going to send that out and have you all look at it and make sure that I've accurately captured your comments. And then we will submit this report to the Parks Department. Thank you very much. We need to vacate the room. I appreciate your time and talents and hope to see you again.